was saying, well, look, I'm going to, if you're not going to bless me and return your tenth, I'm going to withhold my blessing over your the agriculture of the day. And so if you do return the tenth, then God's going to bless you abundantly. So there is a transactional nature to tithe. It's God saying, the more you give me, the more I give you, so that you can give me more. It's a test. It's a trust relationship. It's saying, if you give me your first fruits, and that, like, tithe is the first fruits. It's what you pay God first after you've paid those costs that, like the tax and all that. You pay God first, okay? And if you do that, it's the first fruits and all those other blessings. So you could actually then go and look at all the first fruits comments, and there's just such a blessing that comes from it, because God's saying, you're giving me your first, I'm going to increase more. Like, you could see the same principle in Jesus' parable where, you've been faithful in little things, I'm going to give you more things, I'm going to give you even greater things. And so he's going to increase what he gives you because of that faithfulness. It's a trust, it's a test. It's saying to God, I trust you. Like, I acknowledge that everything you've given me, that everything I have has been given me from you, and I'm giving it back. Okay, so the next one is, and I've heard this from some places, especially those who don't have women pastors, only men got paid out of tithe. Well, no, women got paid out of the tithe as well. So now that we've established that the New Testament had tithe, if we go to 1 Timothy chapter 5, 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 3. Yeah, 1 Timothy 5, verse 3. Honor widows who are truly in need. Okay? So this is but if a widow has children or grandchildren, they should learn to fulfill their duty towards their own household and repay to their parents what is owed them. So, basically tithing to their parents. For this is what pleases God. But the widow who is truly in need and completely on her own, has set her hope on God, continues in her pleas and prayers day and night. But the one who lives for pleasure is dead. But if someone has not provided for his own, especially his own family, he has denied his faith. So that if you read through this, a widow indeed in the New Testament, in what Paul is describing, is the equivalent of a male elder. And so they were to be provided for. And these widows indeed are probably wives of people who were elders, people who were given over for the cause of God. And so this is, they were to be provided for out of the tithe. So it's that, it's for women as well. Verse 5, we are to make giving... this is objection 5. We are to make giving a focal part of the worship service. Now, this is not an objection, this is a practice, sorry. So I want to debunk this. And I've been to churches where the tithing and offering phase is like fanfare. It is like massive. And it's usually big churches. It's usually churches that like they've grown to an excess, and they're like, I went to one place where they spent like 15 minutes on trying to convince everyone to empty their pockets. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. They were, it was kind of like you go to those places where, like secular places, and they're trying to upsell you and stuff. And this is like, they're trying to upsell you on tithe. They're trying to upsell you on giving more. And I was just like, it was very distasteful. But fanfare in giving is condemned by Jesus, and that's in Matthew chapter 6. So Matthew chapter 6, basically, Matthew chapter 6 is one place that Jesus addresses this. Matthew 6 and verse, where is it? 2 and 3. Matthew 6, verse 2 and 3. This is in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is saying, be careful not to display your righteousness merely to be seen by people. Otherwise you have no reward with your Father in heaven. Thus, whenever you do charitable giving, do not blow a trumpet before you as the hypocrites in the synagogues and on the streets, so that people will praise them. I tell you the truth, they have their reward. But when you do your giving, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so your gift may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So, in church, I've always hated the offering basket, the offering bag, whatever it is, that goes around. There are places for it, for if you're doing like a thank offering for having a guest speaker and you need to pay for that person. I can see that being an issue of exception. But if it's week after week, where for the tithe, this is where people feel shame. This is where people can feel awkward. Is where they might have nothing, especially today. I mean, who carries cash now? I mean, I know that the ideal is to carry cash because we don't want to go cashless, but the reality is I don't have a wallet that carries cash. My wallet doesn't have a room for cash. Now I do have cash occasionally in the center console, but I'm not one of those people who like I'm a person who will probably lose money rather than have it. So I my point here is cash is not even carried that often. So I think that it's even less that we should be passing around an offering plate. At Border Church, we just have a box at the back. I do intend, and we'll probably very soon have a tap, thing to tap on, so that people who don't have cash, they can come and just put their money in and tap. We have online giving. You can even see in the corner here of the screen. If you see in the corner of the screen, it says, thanks for giving. There's a QR code, and you can give through that QR code anywhere in the world, and it doesn't there's no there's a currency transfer, but that's it. They take a small percentage in terms of the giving, but it's not like if you go and use MoneyGram or Western Union. It's a very, very small amount. So people anywhere in the world can give if they would like to give to Border Church and what we're doing here. So if this is your church, if this is your online church, you're welcome to do that. And I would encourage you, based on what the Bible says, to show faithfulness to God in that way. But it is between you and God. It's not something I'm going to harp on about every week. I'll talk about it occasionally when we need offerings to, like we've had insurance we've had to pay recently, and we've paid that, and we made it up. And it's because it's not my church. It's the church of the people who come here, which includes you online if you're watching online. So you can give. You can set up a regular giving, so you don't even have to think about it. If your money that's coming in is regular, and what you've calculated your costs, you can do that. And I encourage you to do that. It takes the thinking out of it. So those are things you can do. But to make it a big fanfare within the service, and in fact, Paul, when he says, "When I come, lay up on the first day of the week," that's because Paul's practice was to meet on the Sabbath. Paul's practice wasn't that they had worship services it was Sabbath. You look all through Acts, he went from Sabbath to Sabbath in the synagogues and then outside of the synagogues. And when there was no synagogue, he'd go on the Sabbath to the water. And so he's saying, lay it up on the first day of the week, so that when I come and there's celebration time in terms of worshiping God, we're not having to focus on everyone pulling out their money on the Sabbath day. That's the key there. And so when money and giving is made a huge focus of Sabbath services, or even Sundays, if your day is Sunday, if that's meant for worship for you, don't let it be taken up by economic concerns, where people are like judging how much money is. I used to, when I was a kid, when I was I'd just become a Christian, a teenager, I had no job. And so when the offering basket would come around, I'd just tap the bottom. So I'd put my hand over the top, tap the bottom, as it was getting passed by. So it sounded like I put money in, because I felt bad. I was just a kid. Okay, so it shouldn't be a part. That's going to annoy a lot of, especially the big churches that love to make it a big part of it. So the last one here is tithe is not important when the church is unfaithful. So a lot of people are like, well, my church is not faithful, so therefore I shouldn't give. Well, tithe is not about your church. Tithe is about you. Tithe is about you and your faithfulness. So tithe is important. It's something that you should be doing because of you. But even if we were to go, okay, there's only one church in the whole world, and it's the true church, but it's in apostasy, and so therefore, how can I give to that church? Well, the widow, Jesus, when Jesus highlighted this old lady who comes and puts like a mite. Now a mite is like it's nothing. It's 20 cents basically. It's like 50 cents. She puts her last little bit of income into the coffer in the temple. And Jesus commends her and says, this woman, this mite is going to have such an increase because people are going to talk about it forever. Well, that timing of that story is the week he's about to be killed by the priests who she's just given to. The priesthood that she's just given into is about to kill Jesus in a couple of days, and he's commending her for giving. Tithing has nothing to do with who you give it to. It's about you doing the giving. Now, when I say that, you now no longer have one option. You now no longer have one option. If your church is unfaithful with their tithe, you can find a church that is doing or a ministry that is doing the work that you believe should be done. I didn't used to believe this, but now I've changed on this because I've seen what happens behind the scenes, and we'll talk about that in a moment. I'm going to talk about that very soon. So I just want to talk about this. So I've eased your burden for a second. I'm going to increase your burden again. There was one pastor I know, a friend of mine, tells me that her church, her dad's church, was going through a crisis on this topic, where some of the congregation were saying tithe is valid and everyone needs to tithe. Others in the congregation were saying no, tithe is only for the it is only for the Old Testament. And so this was a debate, and they were having like a synod on this. They were having a big discussion after church. Should we tithe? Should we not tithe? People were getting heated, and there was this old missionary at the back, and unable to resolve it, the pastor said to the missionary, "Have you got anything to say?" And this humble missionary gets up, and he says, he gets the microphone, and he says, "If we were to give a tenth under the old covenant, how much more should we give under the new covenant?" And it was a mic drop moment. It silenced the entire group. See, the tenth is the minimum. The tenth is only ever been the minimum. It's the bare minimum of what you should be giving to God, returning to God. Did God give a tenth for us? Did Jesus give a tenth for us? No. God gave us everything. Jesus poured himself out. And so how much should we be returning to God today? Well, we should be returning everything. Okay? And that includes the tenth to God for the upkeep of the ministry. That includes the tenth for our own spiritual development. Make sure you put your mask on. That includes the tenth for the service of the poor. All right. Jesus himself said, "Unless your righteousness exceeds the Pharisees," okay, and righteousness is one thing, but goodness is another thing. We should be aiming for goodness. We should be aiming for exceeding that. Now, I'm not saying that so that I get richer or whatever. I will take the tithe that is used at Border Church. Sometimes goes to me, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, it goes to the ministry that's out there. We didn't have enough tithe to pay me or income to pay me for 6 months last year, and I worked anyway. All right, we still trusted in God. I don't care. It doesn't, I know God will provide for us, and God has provided for us, and we're doing our own work of tent making as well to try and rely less on that. But it's about how much do you appreciate what God has given? Like we tithe. The priests also had to tithe. We tithe, but then we don't even count it because it far exceeds what we give in back into the church. Far exceeds it. I mean, our youth program is largely funded by Alina and myself. We take nothing out of the tithe for that. And this is what I mean is you need to be thinking about your tithe as what do you want to see the kingdom do in your area? Do you want to see it grow? Then look for ways that you can support that, and that does include your church or a church. If you don't go to a church, if you're remote, we would love to support and help you, and we do. We put these programs on. It's going to start being a lot more with podcasting. If no matter where you are in the world, you can give here. But I encourage you to look at what you're prioritizing. Are you prioritizing eternal things, or are you prioritizing temporal things? So that's number one. Is you've got to, your righteousness has to exceed the Pharisees. It's not like I've minimized your minimum. I've minimized your minimum. It's off your post-tax, post-domiciliary costs. But are you going to just give the minimum? That's the question you need to ask yourself. The law is a schoolmaster. Galatians said that the law was a schoolmaster. It was there until we graduate. Once we've graduated, it's inside of us. We've taken it on board. If that's the case, then what should the tithe be? It should be more than just our income. It should be our time. It should be our energy. Are you giving God back not just your money, but your energy and your time? Are you serving Him in capacities that grow the kingdom? In Mark 7, verse 1 to 13, Jesus is talking about the traditions of man, and how these people, the church, was demanding that if you're giving everything to God, you're giving it to the church. Well, that's not true. They were trying to get people to give even what belonged to their parents. No, giving everything to God doesn't mean giving everything to the church. It means honoring your responsibilities. So that would include making sure your family is taken and provided for. That includes making sure you tithe towards your own spiritual development. So buy some books and devotionals and audio books and things that are going to grow you. Some apps that are going to help you. So this is what I'm saying is important there. Tithe is not so. We should be giving everything to God, all of ourselves, just like God gave Himself to us. It should be seen as the minimum. Tithe was never God's portion. Now I want to talk a little bit. Just a second, I've got to respond to someone who's messaged me. So it's how is tithe used? Well, churches are not being faithful in tithe entirely. Now some are. But what you need to do is you need to do some research into your church and how it uses tithe. The reason I say this is because if your church is faithful in tithe, and I shouldn't have said this, so there's a lot of churches that are faithful in tithe, but there are a lot that are taking it a little bit too far. The church that I used to be a part of is one that the more that I've looked into how they're using their tithe, the more that I've become completely disillusioned with what they do. And I say this as someone who's been sued by that church. So the church that I used to belong to, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, is in Australia one of the most highly paid denominational churches for their clergy. So the average pastor's salary or total remuneration is the average salary in Australia for a pastor is about 82,000, 85,000 at the moment. 82,000 a few years ago when I did this research. So when we as a church said, hey, we want to support you, Brendan, for the work that you're doing, I then was in the situation where I'm like, oh, I've got to come up with a business model here. And so I went and I did a research on all of the denominations I could find. And I found that, depending on the denomination, they pay different. So, for example, Catholics pay among the lowest of their stipend or wage to their priests. And the justification for paying so low is because they don't have family costs. It's like a priest is unmarried, and therefore they don't need a wage that supports wife and children. So it's just a single wage. And so average priest salary is around 50,000 at the moment. Okay, at the moment, and they also get housing, they get food, they get vehicle allowance. And this is the thing with most clergy salaries, is that they get allowances as well as their base salary. So it could be about, it can be up to 80,000 a year after all of those things are included. Anglican priests are similar to Catholics. Their typical range can be 75 to. I need to do probably just another small segment on this, looking at it. But their salary range is 75 to 110, which includes the benefits. That includes the benefits of the rectory housing, the utilities, the car allowance, etc. Orthodox preachers are a similar range to Catholics clergy, so 40 to 80,000. This is just the amounts that I was able to find. Uniting churches as similar to the Anglicans. Presbyterian, again similar to the Anglicans. Baptist, similar to the Anglicans. But the Adventist ones is where you started to get into this higher range, and it's recently been increased. So it's been increased because at the administration level, that's the ones that increased it. At their level, they get a multiplier based on what the base salary of the pastor is. So if they increase the base salary of the pastor, that means that they get more. But tithe is used for pretty much anything administratively in the Adventist Church, and you can tell this because they list throughout the year. They have offerings for this, offerings for that, offerings for that, but they never have an offering for the administration. So all tithe goes to administrative costs, which includes lawsuits. And I've been sued by the Adventist Church at one time, and it mortified me when I realized that this had to be coming out of tithe. They were suing me. They lost. They did not win. But so what is you need to be asking your church, what is my tithe going to? What are you doing with my tithe? And because they've increased the salary of pastors so much, they now can afford fewer pastors. Because now, and when I say a salary, for pastors in Australia, there is a huge benefit here. And I won't lie, I will avail myself of whatever I can personally. So I'm not saying this as like them. This is what we get. So you get, if you're a pastor in full-time ministry in Australia, or even in part-time, if the work that you're doing is serving your faith community as a pastor, as a priest, whatever, you can take a portion of your base salary as tax-exempt fringe benefit. You can also take your allowances as tax-exempt fringe benefit. So, for example, the base salary might be 80,000. You can take 50% of that, and this is a common practice amongst all clergy. It's recommended by Baptists, Seventh-day Adventists, all of that. You can take a half of your base salary and not have to pay tax on it. No income tax. So that means you're only paying income tax on 80,000. Then if you've got $30,000 in allowances, which is quite common for a senior pastor in the Adventist church, so their total remuneration is on about $115,000 a year, and their tax is only on $40,000. Okay, that's ludicrous. I mean, you don't start getting taxed until 18,000, and then you have very little tax until the next pay scale. So you're really paying on 40,000 on your total remuneration. Your tax as a pastor is a few $1,000s. So your take home is a lot greater. I'm saying this because there needs to be some sort of accountability and knowledge amongst people about what they're doing, and maybe a challenge, maybe challenging within whatever stream you're in, whatever denominational format. Make sure that it's not a ludicrous amount, because then that's robbing other churches of having pastors and priests. So I'm just saying this so that you're aware. I don't know how it is in other countries. I know in America they have similar benefits for clergy because they've carved out parts of the tax code to help that. In Australia, it's definitely advantageous to be a pastor if you don't want to pay a lot of tax. You've still got to demonstrate certain things. I will say this though, the Seventh Day Adventist Church loves to have its cake and eat it too, so that even though the the tax exempt fringe benefits favor the pastors, it doesn't practically go into the hands of the pastors. The administration skims a lot of that increase, like the what would have otherwise been tax. They skim a lot of that and redirect it to their own coffers. So a lot of pastors should be quite angry about that as well, because they're not getting what they should be getting. The people who I've spoken to within the Seventh Day Adventist Church who have told me this, and this is from people who are in high levels, high administrative levels, who've told me how this works, it does sound very, very dodgy, like borderline not legal, the way that they're doing it. So, because it should be all going to the pastor. And if it was all going to the pastor, maybe they wouldn't need 110,000. They'd be able to survive on a lot less because they'd be getting what they should be getting. So these are questions that you need to ask. You need to be asking these questions out there. Maybe I'll do a topic where I bring receipts. I have done an interview with someone who, especially within it was specifically for the Adventist Church, where I did bring those receipts. Maybe I'll do that, and I'll bring the receipts for a bunch of different comparative pay scales, because not every church and not every denomination is transparent about this. The Adventist Church is not transparent about what they pay their pastors. You have to either you have to be in the know, or you have to have had that knowledge leaked to you. You have to have had that information leaked to you. And I'm in the category of having had it leaked to me, how much they and what their tithe is used for. So that is the tithe in a nutshell. So what should you do? Well, you should start thinking about, what is my priority? What am I doing, not just with my money, but with my time, with my energy? Are you focusing on building up the kingdom, storing up treasures in heaven that are going to be eternal? And that means, what can we take to heaven? We can take ourselves, and we can take other people. Nothing else goes. Nothing else is going to cross that boundary. Everything else is going to burn. So are you using it to win souls for Jesus and bring souls into the kingdom, and yourself included, or are you using it for things that are going to perish? That's our ultimate calculation, and that's why tithe is important, because it does set us a minimum, and that minimum can be a schoolmaster. Okay, that minimum, the tenth is the schoolmaster, but then when we graduate, we should be giving more. We should be giving when we see how much God has done for us. It should elicit, okay, I've got to match that. I've got to return that in service, and that's why Paul calls himself a servant of God. And even when he was tent making, he was tent making to put it all back into the kingdom. What are you doing in terms of giving into the kingdom? Are you tithing for yourself? Have you thought of setting aside money that is to bless you when you go to camp meetings, to church camps, to have you ever gone, it's church camp time, I can't afford to go? Well, that's a problem. You should have been setting aside throughout the year to go to church camp, or conferences, or conventions, or whatever it is. If you've been setting aside a tenth of your income for your own family's spiritual development, then when something comes along and you're like, oh man, I wish I could afford going to that thing, you're not gonna have that. You're gonna be like, great, we can use our personal tithe fund, our tithe to ourselves, for that. Are you tithing? Are you giving to the people who are needy around you? So that's what I would say is a question that I'm not going to tell you what to do. I hate this topic, just because as an everyday Joe, I don't like asking for money. I hate it, and it feels too much like it when that happens. I will say that if you want to give, we are so thankful. We are so blessed by the giving that comes online, and and other things. What is it, Victor? Is that a beetle? Oh, you found a cockroach. I'll deal with it in a moment. Okay. Do you want to come over here? Come over here and let's say goodbye to the people. Do you want to pray with me? Come on. Yeah, come on. Come over here. Okay, we're about to go now to church, and I'm going to set this to a stream. Victor, wave to them. Let's pray together. Dear God, thank you so much for this new day.
Thank you so much for this new
day.
day.
Thank you for giving us everything that you have.
Thank you for giving us everything you have.
I ask that you give us a giving heart. That you give us a giving heart.
I ask you that you would give us a giving heart.
And help us to bless your kingdom.
And help us to bless your kingdom.
In the way that you've blessed us.
And the way you've blessed us.
We love you.
We love you.
And we thank you.
And we thank you.
In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Good boy, Victor. Well, thank you. I hope you have a blessed day, and we will see you next week back at church. Have a fun day, and leave any questions in the comments. I'll get to them later. Bye for now.